take Airbnb. Their primary core insight that the entire several billion-dollar company is based off of is people want to stay in other people's homes. That was not obvious when they started, right? And if you think about Uber, again, tens of billions of dollars worth of company, people want to get rides and are willing to get in strangers' cars. Like those are insights that they have about people that were non-obvious, and literally the entire startup grew out of that. So I think if there's any magic, this is actually the magic. It doesn't seem like much magic, but this is really like our entire growth framework, and everything I've ever worked on in startups is basically encapsulated in this loop. Let me talk about it at just like a high level for right now. The first part of this loop comes from being able to generate user insights. And what that means is being able to generate kind of like learnings about your users and what they need, what they want, and what their problems are. We're going to spend most of today talking about this piece, but this whole loop starts with being able to generate these user insights. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into this. Once you have these user insights, then you generate ideas based on it. So if you learn something about a user and then you're like, okay, cool. Like I know users really are interested in this. And then you generate ideas on kind of how to deliver that to them. And those are still hypotheses at that time. And then you experiment on those ideas. So you actually try those ideas, you validate that what you're thinking is actually kind of correct. And then based on those experiments, you kind of like learn what it is that you get from those experiments and kind of validate, and you just like run this cycle over and over and over. For context, we literally, when I sit in final interviews with Brian and we're investing in companies, we are basically trying to get a gauge of whether founders can do this efficiently and effectively kind of over and over and over and over, and regardless of the stage. Maybe one piece of insight here from working with quite a lot of companies now is most companies think that their problem is either like experiments or learning or something later in this funnel. And almost all of the problems are actually in user insights. So in the very beginning of the batch, we talk a lot about experimenting and learning. And as we dig in with people, we actually find out that their problem is a user insight problem. There's this famous saying in when you're like playwriting, which I'm not a playwright, I don't know why I've heard this before, but basically most stories have 3 acts, and act 3 is obviously the ending. And there's this famous saying that if you have act 3 problems, or if you have ending problems, you have act 1 problems, because act 3 is just a payoff to whatever you do in act 1. And so similar to this, if you have problems with experimenting and learning and all of that stuff, you actually have user insight problems. So we're going to spend on all of today just talking about user insights. Okay. Okay, let me define what this means. So user insights are anything you learn about your user related to the problem you're trying to solve. And that's very broad, and you can learn all kinds of things about them, including what their favorite color is. And not all of them are going to be super useful. And I think maybe one of the things that I want to call out here is like not all the insights are created equally. And so some of the things you learn about users are structural, and some are kind of like surface level, and some are like not useful at all. And so you want to be kind of thoughtful about the value of the user insights that you're looking for, but there's a difference. There's always, I don't know if I didn't think about this when I started out as a founder, but often a startup is a manifestation of a single core insight that turns into a startup. And there's really good examples of this, right? So one of them is like, take Airbnb. Their primary core insight that the entire several billion-dollar company is based off of is people want to stay in other people's homes. That was not obvious when they started, right? And if you think about Uber, again, tens of billions of dollars worth of company, people want to get rides and are willing to get in strangers' cars. Like those are insights that they have about people that were non-obvious, and literally the entire startup grew out of that. So oftentimes when we're thinking about investing in companies, when we start companies, we're like, what is the core insight that our startup is built around? And how do we kind of build out from there, right? And so you need a bunch of other insights around kind of like, okay, well, what kind of homes do people want to stay in? What type of people do homes? There's a lot of that kind of work, but there's like a core piece here. And I say this because I think sometimes people think about kind of like insights is like, yeah, tell me the like actual important stuff, but insights is actually the important thing. Okay. Growth, I think of oftentimes as you're just exploiting an insight, right? So you have to make an observation about some users, about what they are, what they want. And then growth is just the outcome of you exploiting what that is. And exploit is a word I chose carefully because I think if you're kind of like a hacker person and all of that kind of stuff, there's exploits that you do when you hack into systems and stuff. And it's kind of a similar thing. If you learn that people like really want this thing and only you know about it, then you quietly keep it to yourself and you exploit the hell out of it until you get every last bit of value from it. And that's kind of what startups kind of like do. Now, in reality, it's like for Airbnb, it's like they tried to tell everybody about their insight and nobody believed them. And so they were able to exploit it because nobody believed them. But growth comes out of being able to exploit the insights that you have about users. And so that's why user insights out of the entire kind of like cycle is probably the most important piece of it. And the thing we spend most time talking to companies about. YC has a famous saying about kind of like talking to users. That's like the thing they drill into you over and over when you're part of the program is like talk to users, talk to users, talk to users. This is why.